Megan Nicole Lancaster was a 25-year-old from Portsmouth, Ohio. She was a mother and high school athlete. On April 3rd, 2013, Megan had gone shopping with her mother, but then went off by herself. A little later, she called to say she'd be home shortly. Megan never arrived. Her car was found a couple days later. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Dentzel, and this is Unfound. About 6 weeks ago, during my conversation with Angela Boydo, mother of Shannon Boydo, we got talking about how people don't remember phone numbers anymore. And if you listen to that episode, you know why the conversation is relevant. Shannon wrote down a couple phone numbers on a check stub before she disappeared. Angela and I were commenting how new cell phones have made us lazy. Except for my dad's phone number, I couldn't tell you one other number in my LG V30. Why? Because I just go to the name I want on my contacts list and push it. Who cares what the actual number is? In contrast, back in the day, if you were the type of person who needed to have a lot of numbers close at hand, you had a book with the important digits in it. Very common then, but something kids today would never understand. Well, in the case of Megan Lancaster, she was a 21st century type of young woman, with a cell phone like the rest of us. Yet due to the lifestyle she found herself in, Megan started to amass a long list of phone numbers, ones she wrote down in her own handwriting, as if it were 1985 all over again. And could it be that the key to her disappearance can be found in her little black book? And now a summary of the case. Megan Lancaster, like many of the young women we talk about on Unfound, started off on the right track, then got on the wrong one. She went to high school and graduated. Megan attended Votech school and graduated. Yet her education could not keep her from getting mixed up in drugs in her early 20s. Dating two men who further exacerbated her descent didn't help. But no matter her situation, Megan tried to be the best mother for her son Reese. In fact, getting a tattoo of his name on her shoulder. So on April 3rd, 2013, Megan was out with her mother in separate vehicles. At some point, Megan went one direction and her mother went the other. Later, Megan called to say she was at the Dixon residence and that she was waiting for Shannon Woods to arrive, a man who was known to be her drug dealer, and that she would come home shortly. Her Mustang was found a few days later. Megan was never seen again. Megan's disappearance has served to put a spotlight on Portsmouth, Ohio, and the corruption that has been going on there for decades. These are some of the questions that have been raised due to the ongoing investigation. Number 1. How can a local lawyer continue to keep his law license with so many women pointing the finger at him, claiming he is a sex trafficker? Number 2. Why have some regular people been indicted and convicted on a variety of charges regarding the corruption, but others in positions of power haven't? And number 3. What role do the extensive records Megan kept of her sexual encounters with over 100 men inside and outside of the Portsmouth area play in her disappearance? Megan's family believes her disappearance is connected to a multitude of young women who have either disappeared or been found murdered in the southern Ohio area over the past decade. The guest for this episode is Megan's longtime best friend and sister-in-law, Katie Lancaster. Unfound news. Do I sound different? Well, maybe I shouldn't. I'm recording this from my new place in Clearwater Beach, Florida. This new apartment is still a complete wreck because I haven't put any of my stuff away yet, but it's my new home and I'm loving it. Next, now that I'm moved and once everything is put away, I can finish Volume 6 of Season 1. And I can also start to get some of the first transcribers compensated for their hard work. Finally, if some of you aren't aware, Hemphill County Deputy Pine Gregory was fired about a week and a half ago. You can go to the Unfound Podcast discussion group to find out more about this interesting development. Where you can find Unfound. Unfound supports accounts on Podomatic, iTunes, Stitcher, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. On Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, please join us on YouTube for the Unfound Live Show. Contribute to Unfound at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. You can also contribute at PayPal, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. That is also the email address. Merchandise, the books at Amazon.com in both ebook and print form. The shirts at myshopify.com. Cards at makeplayingcards.com. And please mention Unfound at all true crime websites and forums. Thank you.
I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the sister-in-law of Megan Lancaster, Katie Lancaster. Katie, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you.
Let's start here. You are the sister-in-law of Megan. How is it that I'm talking to you today? How did you get involved in this, and how long have you been involved in her disappearance and trying to figure out what happened to her?
I have been involved since the very beginning, since day one. I just found that it was best to have one person kind of over everything, and I just kind of took over and went, we've been going from there.
Mm-hmm.
My mother-in-law had a nervous breakdown after Megan went missing, so it's just been easiest that my husband and I do things rather than, her mom and dad.
All right. And we should be clear, it's your husband is the brother of Megan.
Yes, my husband is Megan's brother.
Okay. Older or younger brother?
Older brother.
Okay. Great. All right. So that's how you got involved. You kind of, sounds to me maybe kind of just like you took the reins for the family.
Yes, I did because, that's a tragic event, and Megan was, she was my best friend before I married her brother.
Okay.
And so that's just, I just thought, that, people didn't know what to do. Everybody was so nervous, so scared, so everything. So I kind of could go at both sides of both sides of it.
Yeah.
I'm not her blood family, but yet I'm her family.
Sure.
And so I have a little bit more, I can be both sides. I can, You
can be both the emotional side and the logical side.
And the logical side, exactly.
Yeah. That's a good point. I love that point. Yes. Okay. Okay, great. So you've been doing this since day one, so April of 2013. And we'll get into some of the things you've personally gotten into, which I think the listeners are going to want to hear about. But you said you and Megan were best friends. How long had you known each other, maybe before you married Megan's brother?
Since we were 16.
Okay.
And which wasn't very long before I married her brother. I got married to her brother when I was 17.
Okay.
So, a couple years, and in that couple years, we had so many good times and had so much fun, and she was such a fun person to be around.
What was she into when you two were friends? What were you young women into?
She was into sports. She was in, every sport there was, she played. And that's all she worried about was sports and her boyfriend. And, whenever she wasn't playing sports, we were at her boyfriend's house. And, that's the father of her child.
Okay.
And I'd just rather not name him, but
it's fine.
They had a rough relationship a little bit. So
did you talk to her as her friend? Did you talk to her about that a lot?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
But she was in love. She was in love with him, very much so.
Okay.
And so, that was what it was. But as her friend, I just went along with what she wanted. And then several months into, her dating that guy, I actually began to date her brother. So that's how that all became.
That's how that all happened. And then you got married at 17, and
yep.
You've been married, I guess, for a few years now.
Yep, 14.
Congratulations. Good for you.
Thank you.
Good for you. Okay, so you and she were obviously best friends. She's into sports. I guess you weren't so much into the sports stuff,
No,
Kate?
I wasn't at that age. I was when I was younger, but not at that age, no.
Okay. Now, being that you were so close to her, do you remember the first time maybe you thought that, man, it seems maybe that she had gotten onto the wrong track? Something, maybe the first time that, or was that after high school? Was that into the relationship with this guy? Was it maybe later when we're not going to mention by name, but her newer boyfriend? Do you remember that time when you thought, you know what, I think my best friend Megan, something's up here?
Yes, there was a time. I don't remember exactly the dates or, that it was or the time, but there was a time, and it was after I married her brother, that I really noticed things going downhill. And then they weren't so bad. They weren't as bad as they got at the time, but they ended up getting really bad.
Okay. Did you have any, looking back at it now, any insight on, and we're not here to get deep into her personal life or anything like that, but anything you look back 2020 now that you've been married for 14 years, you are a mother yourself, you look back and say, maybe that was the cause of it or anything like that?
Well, she became what she was calling a vacuum salesman.
Okay.
Pretty soon after high school, and we found out that she was working for a local attorney.
Okay.
And whenever she started working for him, things started going really downhill.
Huh.
And then she and she was doing not vacuum salesmen. She was doing dancing and different things for him and his clients.
Wow. And you knew that before she disappeared? You found that out somehow?
Yes, she told us.
Oh, she did. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then she, the boyfriends didn't help. She got this one boyfriend that he's the one that introduced her to the needle.
Okay. And we're not naming any names in this for reasons that we aren't going to go into, but we're not going to name any of the boyfriends' names for this interview. We will name some other names that these guys are going to keep out of it, and I don't believe that either of them are suspects in her disappearance anyway.
No, they're not.
No. So she maybe just had some bad taste in men too.
Yes, I strongly believe that.
Right, and you being married 14 years, obviously your choice was a little better. Okay, so you just kind of knew that you two kind of went separate ways. You got married and having a good life and having children, and she just made some different choices than you. Started working for this lawyer who we're going to talk about in a second. Did you have any conversations with her saying, you know what, Megan?
I did. Her brother and I both did. We tried, we were like, Megan, we know what you're doing. Her mom did, her dad did. Everybody, knew that there was something up.
Yeah.
And we tried to talk to her, and it was just she just didn't want to hear it. She, she got clean a couple times, and that would last 90, 120 days maybe, and then somebody or she would go around somebody, and they would trigger it.
Yeah. And
she'd be right back on it. And so, but in all of that, she had her son.
Mm-hmm.
And she was not on drugs while she was pregnant. Absolutely not. He is perfect. He was 7 when she went missing. He is now 13 years old and doing wonderful. Exceptionally good in school, exceptionally good at every sport he plays, and he plays them all.
Yeah.
Like he didn't want to play baseball, but he ran track instead.
Okay.
So he plays soccer, basketball, and track.
Wow.
And he is doing exceptional in all of them.
And are you raising him, or is her?
No, I am not.
Okay. Is
her
it?
mother raises him.
Okay, Megan's your husband's mother is raising him.
Yep.
Okay. So she just made some tough choices. Got in with a couple guys that she probably could have made a better choice there. So you had mentioned this lawyer, and he's going to be mentioned, I think, prominently later. But let's just talk about him in general. Who are we talking about? Mike Moran?
Yes, Mike Moran.
Mike Moran. Okay. And his last name is Mearan. Mike Moran. Yes. Okay. Let's just talk about him in general now. We're going to have a lot to talk about him later. But for now, did you even know about him before Megan started working for him? Did you know anything about his reputation? Of course, he's like he's like in his 70s or something now, but your 60s. But what can you say about him in general?
In general, personally, I didn't know too much about him back then. I was too young.
Mm-hmm.
But as I grew older, and different things, I definitely knew about his reputation. And I definitely knew she was lying about being a vacuum salesman.
I agree.
Yeah, like I caught, after I knew, I think my husband knew about him and knew that was not the truth. Mm-hmm. But I'm the type of person that tries to give everybody a chance. No matter who you are, no matter, I try to give you a chance and try to help whoever I can. So, I just kind of at first believed that's what she was doing until she finally came out and said, this is not what I'm doing. And we ran into her in Walmart, and she had lingerie on. And I'm like, Megan, what are you doing in Walmart? Get out of here. What are you doing in that?
Huh.
She's like, well, I'm going to a party for Mike Moran and his friends. At the Masons were having this party, which is the Masons are like a group of guys, the Masonic Lodge or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody knows what that is.
Sure.
Like they were having some kind of party, and she was going to be a dancer. Her and another girl were going to be the dancers for the night. And they were there to pick up something that they needed.
Okay, and you just happened to run into her. Do you remember what year and month this might have been?
I do not, but I know it had to be December because it was Santa lingerie.
It was Santa lingerie, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was December maybe of 2012, could have been 2011, you don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay. How do you think that she and Mike met?
Honestly, I have no clue.
Okay.
She was she was playing sports. I don't know if maybe he met her at a sporting event, or if she went into his office for to be. I don't know if because there was a couple of times she had gotten into a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
And she never had him represent her, but I don't know if maybe she had went in because she might have been in a little bit of trouble, and every bit of trouble she'd ever been in, she's gotten out of.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't have a criminal record. So I'm not sure if that's how they met. I'm really not sure.
All right, even to this day, as much as you've been involved in her disappearance, you're still not sure how she and Mike met.
No, because if you ask him, he doesn't know her. He didn't know her.
And we're going to get into that. Yeah, that's very interesting, and we're going to definitely talk about that. So you did hear of his name before Megan disappeared. Once again, you ran into her at Walmart, for example. Before she disappeared, had you ever met him?
No.
Okay. And would you say that when you saw Megan, maybe she came over to your house, did his name ever pop up in conversation just casually?
Yes.
It did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever get the idea maybe that she and Mike might have been having a relationship?
Not a relationship because, I don't really want to get into that.
Okay.
I mean, because the listeners don't want to hear what I have to say about that.
Okay, well, all I'm trying to say is, would you say that she was having a romantic relationship with him, or would you say, and he's much older, I mean, yeah. I'm 48, even much older than I am.
She was having some sort of relationship with him, okay. Whether it be dancing, whatever they do. I don't know exactly what all they do for him, but yes, some sort of relationship.
Okay, and once again, these are things that Mike denies, but like I said, we're going to get into that a little deeper. We're just trying to determine this is a guy who's going to play a part in this. We're not even saying that he's responsible for disappearance, but this goes to maybe a bigger issue going on in Portsmouth, and we can't deny talking about it. So there's Mike Moran. He's really like a defense attorney. That's the kind of attorney that he is, and he's been around the Portsmouth area for decades. In fact, I think he was even a politician. He was an elected politician at one time. All right. Who is Shannon Woods?
Shannon Woods was her drug dealer. He would, at one point he was her drug dealer towards the end before she disappeared.
Okay. So towards the end, but not the whole time. Not all the time that you suspect that maybe she got involved in that.
No.
Okay.
Now this is towards like the very end, because some things had happened, some people had been busted, so she had to go to him to get stuff.
Okay. And so he hadn't been busted. Ever meet him? Did you kind of know him from the neighborhood?
Well, actually, I met him when I was a kid.
Excuse me?
And I met him when I was younger, and I don't remember why I met him. Like, he was around, but back then he didn't sell anything, to my knowledge. Okay. Like, I just met him. I don't remember even where it was, but I knew him for a long time.
Okay. Did he go maybe to the same high school that you and Megan did?
No.
No, he didn't.
No, he was just like around a house that I was playing at. Like, I'm much younger than him, so.
Okay.
I don't remember the reason was that I even met him, but I met him before. Okay.
And he's going to play a part in this eventually as well. Did Megan talk, if it wasn't involving the drugs, did she ever mention him at all?
No.
No. Okay. All right, let's move up to the days and weeks before Megan disappeared. So this would be, let's say, February, March of 2013. Anything now that you look back at it now that seemed worse than it was? Anything that she told you or told maybe your husband or her mother, something new that was going on that worried her? Anything that had been a change from anything that had been going on in the past years?
Well, she did tell her mom that that if anything were to happen to her, you know, that there was a certain list that she wanted put out, which is a list that we put out with Michael Moran's name on it. Okay. She didn't give her mom really a reason as to why to put that out. But that's the list that she asked to be put out.
A term that could be used for this is like a little black book.
Yeah.
Okay, with names in it. With some phone numbers in it, and so she was and who were these people in this book? Not the particular names, but why were they in this book?
Well, it said people that dance, that pay with, or that people that pay money for dancing or something like that at the top of it. Okay.
All right, and she said, just to go over this again, she said if anything ever happened to her, that this book was to be released.
Yes.
Okay, and we're going to be talking about this book later, but you have at least a copy of the book?
Yes.
You do, with it. Okay. And that's very interesting. So listeners should remember that, because we're going to be talking about some of the people in that book and everything later. Okay, so that's one of the things she said. So there was this book, but how did Megan's mother handle that? Hearing that, her daughter's talking like that had to be shocking.
Yes, she was, like, Megan, nothing's ever going to happen to you. You're going to be just fine. And, told her, but if that were to happen, I will make sure it gets out there. And, honestly, as a mother, if I heard those words, I don't know what I would do.
Right.
I'd probably lock my daughter up, which she would have loved to have done. Marcy's like, I would have loved to have handcuffed her in a room, but they would have gotten me.
That's,
handcuffing my own daughter.
Yeah.
For something. And
right.
I think as, people, that they care about their children, they should be able to do something to save them when they're addicts. Like, I don't know. There needs to be stricter laws and stuff that you can help your children when they're addicts, because they're not thinking clearly on the drugs. So of course they don't want help, and they think it's going to be painful, and they think it's going to be that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I do.
There should be stricter some kind of laws that help people when they're addicted, that their parents or their next of kin can help them more.
Yeah. Would you say that her addiction, in your opinion, do you think that her addiction was getting better or worse? Where was she in handling her addictions at the time, maybe a month before she disappeared? About the same, about a little better, a little worse? What would you say?
I say it would be a little worse.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I want listeners to know that Megan was a great person.
Mm-hmm.
She is a great, fun-loving, caring person, and it's not, her addiction did not define her, and that's what I told her all the time. Megan, your addiction does not define you. You can get better, and you can do better, and to hell with what people think.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what people think, but now we're here, so we have to fight against these demons that are these people that, want to call her just an addict and, like a nobody, like most of the police department does.
Yeah.
They even wrote an article calling these girls, saying that their lack of education. Megan was educated. She graduated from Votech and from high school. She was educated. It had nothing to do with it. It had to do with a bad choice, and that was it. One bad choice led her down this road.
Right.
And the wrong men.
Right. Right. When she said that about if anything happens to me, did she ever, well, you weren't there, but did she say any names? That this person was going to do something to me, or this person?
She didn't give specific names, no.
No, okay.
No, but she said that the people on the list were the people most likely to have done something.
Okay. When was the last time you saw or talked to her before she disappeared?
I did not talk to her that day, but I actually saw her in the parking lot at a grocery store. I had just come back because I was getting ready to have my first back surgery. And I had just come back from a doctor in Columbus, my husband and I and all the kids. And she had this man in the car, and my husband and I both saw two different men.
Huh.
And we saw her passing, and I called 911 and said, you guys need to stop her. Something's not right.
Wow.
And they told me, well, we can't stop her. I said, she's speeding. Stop her for speeding. Something's not right. And, they've never brought that up. And I called them effing idiots and everything else on it. And they've never brought that to...
What date was this? What date do you believe? April 3rd, April 2nd? When was this?
It would have been April the 3rd.
3rd?
The day that she went missing, yes.
Wow.
Because I can remember it like it was yesterday. My husband came out to the car and said, oh, they said my mom and my sister both just left here, meaning the mom came in first, Megan came in second, and then he came in third. And I'll never forget that day when I called 911 and I told them they were idiots because they were not stopping that car. I said, something's not right.
All right, let's talk. So this is interesting. I don't think, I'm going to be honest with you, Katie, I don't think you've told me this before.
Okay.
I did.
It probably slipped my mind, but.
Okay. So, all right, so let's get to that day. So she was out. Now, my understanding was that her son was sick that day.
Yes, he had his tonsils taken out.
Okay. And that she was with her mother at some point that day. Is that right as well?
Yes, she was paying her insurance at the insurance company, and then they went on their way.
Okay, so...
They went separate ways.
All right. Oh, they went separate ways.
Yep.
Okay, and so in all of that, so what time do you think that they met each other at the insurance company?
I think she told me it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they met at like a dollar store in Portsmouth, and then Megan got in her mom's car. They went to the insurance company, paid her insurance so that she was legal. So see, this isn't somebody that ran off because they paid her insurance so that she was legal, and then Megan got back in her car and left.
Okay. All right. And and so they went separate ways. Her mother was in one car, Megan's in another car.
Yep. So then that's right after that is when we saw Megan at that gas station. Gas station, food mart type thing. It's like a grocery store with a gas station out front of it.
Okay. And you and your husband say that you saw her with a guy. Do you know who the guy was?
No clue, but he saw something totally different than what I saw. Like, I saw a guy that was kind of bald on top with longer hair, with a beard. He saw somebody totally different. You know how a witness identification is. It's never good.
That's true. That's true. Well, let's just talk about that anyway. So you saw like a guy who had balded on top but was keeping like the long hair?
Long hair in the back, yes.
Okay. And so maybe he was in his 40s or 50s, something like that?
I would say 50s.
50s, okay. And what does your husband say he saw?
I think he saw a completely bald guy. I don't want to say what he saw because I don't really remember.
Okay.
It's been so long ago, and he's not awake, so I can't ask him.
Okay, but it's clear that you two saw different men.
Two different men,
All right,
yes.
Two definitely different men, maybe different ages, different hairstyles, maybe even different races, possibly, or
no, we both saw a white guy.
White guys, okay. All right. And so you just were driving by, didn't feel like U-turning or, to go see what was going on. And what was it that caused you to want to call 911?
They were arguing. But she kind of argued, like, these men, a lot of times she argued a lot. But something just gave me this gut feeling as a mother that something wasn't right. I just knew if they would stop her, if they would have stopped her that day and say found something in her car, she would be with us today.
Mm-hmm.
This wouldn't have happened. And I get so upset that knowing that I called for help and they told me, well, there's nothing we can do.
Were they standing outside the car, or were they sitting in the car?
No, they were in the car driving.
You're in the car driving. Okay.
And I just looked at Jeremy and I said, there's something not right. Like, something's going to happen to your sister. I just have this feeling.
Okay. So were you going like one direction, they were going the other?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We were passing each other.
Okay, going opposite directions. And then you were like, hey, there's Megan, and she's with some guy, and they're arguing, and then it was gone.
Yeah.
They were gone.
Yeah, then they were gone.
Okay. All right. So you see this, and what time do you think this happened?
It was about 4-ish.
Okay. Okay. At that point, did you think even about trying to call her, being, hey, Megan, I just saw you. Is everything okay?
Honestly, I didn't have her cell phone number on me.
Okay.
And I didn't know it by heart. But, no, I didn't. I just thought, she's just arguing with one of these guys again. But just something told me, I did tell her mom, like, something's telling me something's not right. She's like, oh, she'll be just fine. She's coming over, and that's a whole different story I'll tell you when we get to it.
Okay, so you went one direction, she went the other, and this guy, if I may ask, do you have any idea who this guy was, or is this guy still a mystery to you?
He's still a mystery to me.
And so, and being that you have this list, and we're going to talk about this a little later, do you believe he could be one of the guys that is on this list that you have, that she put together?
Very, very much, yes.
But we don't know which guy it is.
Which guy it is, no.
Okay, all right. So you go on your way, you call 911, but Megan's mother does hear from her later. Why don't we talk about that? What went on there?
So Megan's mom, about 7 o'clock that evening, heard from Megan saying, Mom, I'm at the Dixons, or I'm at Trisha's sister's house, which I think her name might be Sherry or something. I don't know. But the Dixons house.
Okay.
They were waiting, I think, on somebody to bring something to Megan, drug-wise. I think it was Shannon was supposed to be meeting them.
Okay.
Anyways, so she said, but as soon as, I run home, I'll be right back down to spend the night with Reese, because he was vomiting blood. He was a bleeder after his tonsils were out.
Okay.
He's a little redhead, so.
Okay, Megan's son, yes. Reese. Okay.
Yeah, so he's a little redhead, so I guess they're bleeders. So when they took the tonsils out, he was bleeding really bad from his mouth. So she said, I'll come down and I will spend the night with him. And her mom said, okay, I'll wait for you, sis, or whatever. And so her mom waited and waited and waited, and she just thought, she went home and fell asleep. So she locked her door and went on to bed.
Okay.
The next day came, no call from Megan. She started getting antsy, so she drove up there. And because she's like, this just isn't normal. Reese is sick. This just isn't normal.
Right.
Well, Megan's car was gone, so she thought, thank God, she hasn't overdosed or something in there. She's out running around, just not wanting to talk to anybody right now. So she went home. That day, that kind of made her more pacified. The next day rolls around. She's sitting on her porch wondering, where's Megan? Why isn't she answering her phone? Just why? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Well, up walks Shannon Woods and says, hey, ma'am, is this do you know which house is Megan Lancaster's parents' house? And she said, that's right here. I'm her mother. And he said, well, I just wanted to tell you that something's not right. Megan's car's been parked at Riley's for 2 days straight, and she's never came back to get it. And he says that he notices that it was there because he had went through Burger King twice.
Huh.
And noticed that the car wasn't there, or was there. Mm-hmm. Now, how he knew her white Mustang out of anybody's, I don't know. I don't know if there's a like a identifying factor on the car, because I don't see one, but he might have known one since he was around her a lot,
Okay.
around the car a lot.
All right, let's go through a little bit of this. So she says she's over at this particular person's house, the Dixons. Seemingly Shannon, who, like you said, comes over to her parents' house later, a couple days later, is supposed to be going over there. We've already established that Shannon is a drug dealer, was probably Megan's supplier. So we get in from April 3rd to April 4th. Mother goes over there, doesn't see her car. She's relieved, so Megan must be out. Did she try to call Megan that, I guess it would be April 4th? Anybody try to call her that day?
Oh, yes, her mother did.
Okay. And was it going straight to voicemail, or was it ringing for a while?
First,
Do you know?
No, it was ringing for a while, and then it started going straight to voicemail.
All right, so that had to be maybe a little bothersome, probably.
Oh, yes. She was like, by April the 5th, whenever he came, she was so nervous and so shaky, thinking what could have happened to my baby, like where's she at, because that was not like Megan. Megan was there for her son every day.
Huh?
At some point in the day.
Okay. To this day, do you know of anybody who actually saw Megan on April 4th? Any reliable sighting?
No.
Of any?
No.
No. Okay. And so we get to April 5th, and then just out of nowhere, Shannon, who allegedly is Megan's drug supplier, just happens to show up at her mother's house, just like out of nowhere.
Yep. And he said that she hasn't called me for anything. Her car's been sitting there. I'm really worried because she would have called me by now for something.
Mm-hmm.
And that, so that he told them where the car was at. They went there. They called the police because Megan was nowhere to be found in the car, around the car, nothing. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Do you have any more questions about Shannon or anything?
Yeah, I think you said something very interesting there, that he happened to note. Now, granted, he knew her probably for a few years, but she was driving a white Mustang. And like you said, and I think you make a great point, how did he happen to notice that particular car and know it was hers? Probably didn't know her license plate. I don't know any license plate of any
of your
person,
friends?
except my own license plate.
Yeah.
How would he pick that car out and know that it was Megan's? Did he go and look in it or something? It just seems a little strange to me, and I'm glad you pointed that out. So, no, please continue. So the police show up. You're now very worried. Her mother's worried. Maybe you're finding out about this at some point around here as well.
I didn't find out about it till after the police got there, or things would have been a lot different.
Okay. All right, well, then let's just go with the police show up to the car, and what did you hear about what happened next?
So the police show up to the car, and they, instead of having like BCI or somebody come, because it had been 48 hours, so at this point we have a missing person. So instead of having BCI and different things, the criminal, which for people that don't know, it's the criminal investigation bureau or whatever.
Okay.
In Ohio.
Okay.
It's like the people that process crime scenes. So instead of having them come, leave the car where it's at, having them come process the car on this spot, they got the car unlocked, had my mother and father-in-law have it towed to their own house where it sat for 6 months. Before, and I had to raise holy hell to get the car processed to begin with after 6 months. And there's nothing that, besides maybe what was in the car, because nobody touched it for that 6 months. So there's no evidence on the outside of the car because it had sat in the weather. And so it took 6 months for them to process her car.
Wow. And nobody drove it, anything for those 6 months?
No, we don't have key. We still to this day don't have keys for it.
So whoever left it there, locked, and took the keys.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I want to come back to the car in a little bit, but during that time, when her car was found, did you were found out about it sometime afterwards? Did her mother or anybody else ever call the Dixons? Being that Shannon came over there, well, she said did you see her that April 3rd, that evening? What did those people have to say about that evening that she was there and what happened?
They pretty well, to my knowledge, denied her being there to her mother.
Huh. Even though Megan herself said that that's where she was.
Yeah.
Okay. And what did Shannon, being that Shannon would seem to be trying to be so helpful with the car, does he also deny that she was at the Dixons? Does he deny seeing her on April 3rd?
He'll say he saw her, but he will not say he was her, like that he brought her drugs.
Okay, well, I can understand that. I'm just trying to establish that, does he admit seeing her on April 3rd in the evening of April 3rd?
Yes.
At the Dixons?
No. That they met somewhere.
Okay. So they met somewhere, and he's seemingly trying to keep the Dixons out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have the car found. It's taken right back to the house, not gone over, which I have to tell you, Katie, is not unusual in these cases. Of course, the case that I think of right off the top of my head is Thomas Brown's case, which we now know is a murder, that the Durango was given back to his family the very day it was found. So, unfortunately, police don't take these things as seriously as they should. A lot of times because they think the person's going to come back in a couple days anyway. But, so nobody had seen Megan after the evening of April 3rd. Overall, at that point, April 5th, April 6th, something like that, before, of course, the car sits there for 6 months, etc. What are you thinking? What is your husband thinking? What is Megan's family, the rest of her family, thinking about all of this?
Well, we are all thinking the worst. I mean, as far as somebody's taken her, somebody has, done something, like, we did not in any way think that she ran off or anything like that. We were checking hotel rooms because we had gotten tips that she was that somebody was taking her in and out of hotel rooms. We were checking, we were putting up flyers, and it seemed as we would put them up, it seemed that people were taking them down as fast as we were putting them up. And we were actually told by police not to do any of this, and I don't really know what their reasoning behind it was.
Yeah.
But we were told, not to do these things. So.
Okay. That happens, and I could think of a few cases where, once again, that Unfound is covered where flyers got torn down. I'm thinking, for example, like Nico Lisi's case in Tennessee. That was also a situation where his mother was putting posters up, and the next day they'd be ripped right back down. So I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, and then also we tried to get it on the news like as soon as possible, and it took us 9 days from the time she went missing till 9 days later to get it on the news.
Okay. Did you, or I know, once again, you said you've been very much involved in this almost from day one, and talking to Shannon, has Shannon or the Dixons since then offered up any explanations as to what could have happened to Megan?
No.
None?
No.
None. Okay.
Shannon, he keeps his innocence. He says he passed a polygraph not once but twice, which I don't know to be true because the cops won't tell us.
Okay.
The Dixons, they just they just don't say anything, really.
I don't say anything. All we know is after April 3rd, nothing, nobody saw Megan. Doesn't necessarily mean that Shannon or the Dixons had anything to do with it, but she's the one that said she was at, she's the one that says she was at the Dixons' house.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you or the cops are just picking that name out of the air.
Yeah, now, I do know that she was seen at Walmart about 7 to 7:30, which would have been after she left the Dixons' house. Picking up money that had been transferred to her from Wyoming.
Why from Wyoming? What's the significance of that?
There was a guy there that would wire her money every so often from, to help her out.
I gotta ask, Katie, why is that?
I guess he was one of her guys, one
how
of
would
her
she?
sons.
How would she even know a guy in Wyoming?
He was coming through Portsmouth one day and picked her up.
Okay. And so he was just wiring her, just once in a while, send her a couple $100, just once in a while. Let's see. Do you know his name?
Yes, it's Bob Thompson.
All right, Bob Thompson. Well, that's a pretty common name. I don't know. We could track him down to find out what his story is, but okay. Just sending...
I've got his phone number. It's out there.
Oh, is it? Okay. Is he in her book?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, but are we sure, I know what you just said, are we sure that it was after she was at the Dixons and not before she went to the Dixons?
I'm pretty sure because she talked to her mom at 7. She was there, so it was like 7:30 to 8, I think Walmart told me. So I'm pretty sure it was after.
Okay, well, maybe that lets Shannon and the Dixons off the hook then. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe, but we don't know where she went after that. Okay. It's just, I have to admit that it just seems weird to me that she would go get money after she was seemingly at the Dixons and waiting for Shannon to show up with drugs. It would seem to me that you'd get money before that.
Yeah, it does, but she was thinking of the next day.
Okay.
Not waking up drug sick.
Okay. That could be a good point. Okay. Were her phone records ever... do you have her phone records? Did she call anybody else that evening? Were you able to get those? Anything like that? Was her phone ever pinged? Anything?
Yes, her phone pinged in Greenup, Kentucky, or South Shore, which is not uncommon because of where we live. That's just right across in Kentucky.
Okay.
That's just right across the bridge.
Okay.
And now, her phone records.
Yes.
They were gotten, and the phone was in her son's name, Reese's name.
Huh.
And because, I don't know why she did that, but it was in Reese's name. It was like a track phone or whatever.
Yeah.
They have them at Verizon, but say that the cops put a stop to us getting them. Like they put a big, do not give these records to anybody besides law enforcement type thing. Because I've myself have called several times trying to get them.
Yeah.
And they will not. They say that the cops told them that they couldn't give them to anybody.
Is that right? To this day,
Yep.
When was the last time you talked to Verizon about her phone records?
It's been a couple years ago, probably. Because I tried for years to get them.
I know probably all my listeners right now are saying, man, that is weird because we talk so much about phone records on this program. And many of the families that I deal with have their missing loved ones' phone records, who they called, when the calls were, etc. But in this particular case, you're telling the listeners, and I believe you, that
Yeah.
the cops specifically told the phone company not to give those records out.
Yes.
Man, sounds like something's going on there, Katie.
Yeah.
Okay, and maybe once we get into some of this other stuff, this will all make sense. Okay, so you haven't been able to get the phone records at all. Have you, in the last, once again, since you've been working on this so hard, has anybody ever approached you or called you and said, you know what, I talked to Megan on the evening of April 3rd. I talked to Megan.
You know what?
Please.
That is a good idea for me to put out there. I need anybody who talked to Megan on these days to please contact me and give my number. That's a good idea.
Okay, well, I'm glad to help. That's interesting because it seems to me, and the listeners, I'm sure, are going to, not that they always have to agree with me. In fact, we differ many times on things, but they're going to agree with me, I think, that there's no way that the police can legally keep you from getting her records.
Yeah, we need an attorney.
You do. I agree. Yeah, you need a good one, and not Mike Moran.
No. He's the cheapest in town, though.
Yes. There's something that doesn't, and the thing is, you have to understand something. Although I know this has seemed like the worst years of your life, and I'm sure the last 6 years have seemed like forever. Okay,
they have.
This disappearance is still fairly new. Okay,
yep.
And it's perfectly believable that Verizon still has those records in their database somewhere.
Okay.
All right, because I think they're required by law to keep them for so many years. For example, I have T-Mobile. I think that I could go back to at least 2011 and get phone records from way back then. So they're out there somewhere.
Well, I'll get on that, and I'll have my private investigator get on it and see if she can get them again.
Okay, and we're going to talk about your private investigator before this is all over. Okay, so the phone records are still this big question mark, and it sounds like something weird is going on there. It might be something illegal, and once again, we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's go back to the car for a little bit. You, I guess, were eventually able to get inside the car somehow, even though there weren't any keys, but was there anything in the car that maybe seems strange to you, or seems strange to her mother, or seems strange to your husband? Anything?
No, but we left the car completely, sealed off, because they had some tape on it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We left it completely sealed off till I did tapings with the, with Spike TV.
Okay, yes, for that show that they did, yes.
Yep. Because, we wanted them to be able to get out of it whatever they could, but we let them do that, so we decided it was okay for Spike TV to film the inside of the car.
Okay. But nothing in the car, even to this day, is anything missing? I mean, besides, of course, Megan, what else is missing? Her phone, her purse, anything else?
Her phone was missing, but her wallet and something else. It was just her wallet was on the front seat open.
Huh.
On the front passenger seat. I don't know if that was her way of saying, help, this isn't me, because she'd never leave her wallet on the front seat like that open.
Uh-huh.
Or a clue, help me, this isn't me, remember, do something.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that was her little, clue for us, because we know that she would never do that.
Okay. Was it her ID missing? What were her credit cards missing? When you say her wallet,
her ID was there. All of her cards were there. Everything like that was there.
But the money she got from Walmart was gone.
Was gone.
All right. So nothing. No signs of. I just have to ask. No signs of violence or anything in the car. I gotta ask.
No.
Okay. All right, so the car doesn't yield much. The phone records are not, still can't be accessed to this day, but
Yep.
I think that we already know that maybe that's something that needs to be worked on in 2019. Okay, so we have the Dixons, we have Shannon. Maybe she did leave there and they have nothing to do with this. Very possible Shannon comes over, conveniently sees the car there. Who knows what to make of that. But there was a rumor that we have to, I think we have to talk about that has circulated around. I don't usually like to talk about rumors, but there might be some support to it. Tell the listeners about Megan and Angela Compton.
Angela Compton was a lady that Megan did not wear a wire on. She did not. This is what the rumor was.
Okay.
That Megan wore a wire on Angela Compton. She did not. Okay? The cops had been, I guess, trying to get Angela Compton for years. So they came, Megan was staying at a place called the Ramada in Portsmouth. They came, busted down the door in Megan's, or like not busted down, but like boom, 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 boom.
Knocked very hard on the door.
Yeah.
Okay.
Knocked very hard on the door, and told her if she did not call her back, Angela Compton back, that she would lose her son and nobody would ever see him again. And scared her to death. So all Megan did, she wasn't even in her disguise, because Megan was not the snitch on the case. So all Megan did was call her back, buy another drug off of her. They got her going out the parking lot. They arrested Angela Compton.
Okay. And when did this happen?
Oh, I think 2011 maybe?
So like a full 2 years before Megan disappeared. Yeah. And did Angela go to jail?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And how did you hear about how this all went down, the banging of the door? Is that something Megan told you and her mother?
Told us, yeah.
She did. Okay. All right. And in your opinion, did Megan fear for her life because of this? I mean, of course she did at the time regarding her son, but after that, was she fearful of revenge?
I think yes, very much so.
Okay. And do you think that Megan had ever been asked to do this before for anybody else?
No.
No. Okay, not that you know of anyway.
No.
Not that you've ever heard since 2013.
No.
Okay, she told you this, so how you found out is from her herself. Where was Angela Compton at the time of Megan's disappearance? Was she out of jail, in jail?
No, I believe she was in prison.
She was. All right,
Yep.
So how would you say that Angela Compton could be connected, for example, to Shannon Woods, who also seems like a drug dealer that Megan knew?
I'm not sure that they are at all.
Okay. All right. So maybe there's something there, but she was in prison. Of course, we know that prisoners can't communicate with the outside. Maybe there's something there. Somebody finally tracked down Megan. Maybe it had something to do with the guy you saw Megan with that day going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
We've mentioned it a few times, but we're going to talk about it now. I'm going to call it a little black book, but it really wasn't a black book. What was it? Please explain it. And when did you and Megan's family find out about it?
Okay, it was more of notebooks, like just random notebooks. You had to look through each notebook with just different pieces of paper in it.
Uh-huh.
It was found in her apartment on her love seat, I believe, where she sat all the time. And it was just, different names and numbers, and it would have, some of them had headers, like guys I dance for, or guys that give money was one of them. Just different things like that.
Okay, so these names, it wasn't just a notebook full of names, it was names and then other things she was writing in the notebook as well?
Yeah.
Okay, like a journal or something like that, or?
Yeah, kind of like.
Okay. And to be clear, you did not find out about this book until after she disappeared?
No.
Okay.
I did not.
Okay, but you had said earlier that it seems maybe her mother knew about it, being that she said, if anything happens to me, release this book.
Yeah, release this one piece of paper.
One piece of paper. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But you're telling me it was like notebooks, and when I think of notebook, I think of lined pieces of paper, like 50 pages in a notebook, and you're telling me there were notebooks, plural.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they weren't completely full.
Right.
They were like hit and miss pages.
Okay. And so Megan's mother knew about these books, or this piece of paper, and did her mother even know what that meant when Megan said it?
No, not really.
Not really. All right. And it wasn't until she disappeared that somebody went over to her house and then found this notebook that you kind of put it all together, what she meant?
Yeah.
Okay. And any idea how long she had been keeping this book?
No clue. Now that's a good question. No, I have no clue.
Okay. Like you said, there were a bunch of men's names in the book, and we're going to be talking about some of them.
Yep.
But how many guys total would you say were in there?
Probably 120-ish, 30-ish.
Okay. So
I don't know. I have a spreadsheet. We'll put it this way. I did. Spike TV made me a spreadsheet of like the names and the numbers and what page they found it on in her book, and just different things on the spreadsheet. And it's 4 long pages of names and numbers.
All right, so it's pretty long. Pretty okay. And it details, these guys that have given her money to dance and maybe do other things. And are they full names? Like John Smith?
Not all of them, no.
Not all of them, but a lot of them. Okay.
Yeah.
And their phone numbers with them. Has anybody at the time called these numbers?
Yes.
All right. And just if you did so, or maybe
I did so.
All right. Tell the listeners about your experience dialing some of these numbers.
Most of them were either disconnected, or I got the fact, and a lot of it were men that answered. So I put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah.
They were lying to me. They said that they just got that number. They have no clue who I'm talking about. That sort of thing.
Okay. Of course. Did any of them at all admit knowing Megan?
No.
Not one out of as many as you called?
No.
None. Okay. Okay. And were they all like Ohio numbers? Like you said, there was even a guy who gave her money from Wyoming. Were they all like Ohio area codes, or were they all around the United States?
There were a couple Kentucky ones. I take that back. One guy in Kentucky did admit to knowing her. I forgot about him.
That was nice of him.
Yeah, she had on there the Brazilian guy. He must be Brazilian. I never met him, but he did admit to knowing her. And
did you have a conversation about why he knew her?
A little bit, but he didn't go into the sexual part of it. But I know that's why he knew her.
Okay. Did he happen to say how they first met? Even nothing like that. And I realize it's been some years. If you've forgotten or whatever, I can totally understand. Okay, so we don't know about that. Okay, so we have this little black book, even though it's not little and it's not black, although it is a notebook. Have all these names. Got Megan also writing other things in there, and if you looked at the rest of the writing, was there anything in there about any fears that she had?
No.
Nothing like that.
No.
Like this guy, John Doe roughed me up or anything like that.
No, just if anything shall happen to me, call, and it had her mother and an address.
Okay. And whose address was it?
Her mom.
Oh, her mom's address too. Okay. All right. Do you get the idea, having seen the book, that she took that with her everywhere, or do you think that she just left that at home?
I think she just left it at home and just would write, like, at night when she was home by herself, or, because she lived alone. So she would just write when she was there by herself and stuff.
Okay. Do you get the idea that none of these men even knew that this book existed?
Oh, yes.
It was a secret book. Very secret.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on to talking about some of the men in this book, and we're going to name them by name because their names are in the book. And we know there's no doubt, although I'm not saying there aren't other men in the United States that have these names, but we know for sure that these men were in the book. We're going to talk about Mike Moran. His name's in the book, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and it says that he would pay $80. It actually has a price beside his name.
All right, $80. Does it say for what?
It says for dancing.
Okay. All right, so he's in the book, and you're still not sure how they met, but she claimed that she was working for him.
Yep.
But it seems like maybe he was more of a customer.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's something attached to Mike Moran that, of course, could you please say, what does Mike Moran say about Megan?
Mike Moran says he did not know her, does not know why. The only way that he knew her was because the Angela Compton case, he represented Angela Compton.
So he was on the opposing side for that, allegedly?
Yes.
Okay. Huh. Well, that is interesting. But then on the other hand, it seems he's in Megan's book.
Yes.
It seems like a conflict of interest to me.
And my father-in-law saw him pick Megan up outside their house not very many years before she came up missing.
Okay. Do you think it would have been around the time that the Angela Compton case was going on, around that time?
Maybe a little before.
Oh. Okay. There's something else, though, that somebody else that saw Megan and Mike together. Tell the listeners about the car wreck.
Yes, there's some girls that say that they saw a car accident, that they were in a car accident, and that Mike rear-ended them, and he did not want the police called or anything. He just said that he would pay for the damages, and that Megan was in the car. Now, nobody knows this. These girls would have no way of knowing this about Megan. They said that she went into a gas station and brought them back out some candy. And why this is significant is because Megan was the type, she was very giving and, all of that, but she loved kids, loved them. And anytime she would see a kid, young or old, teenager, whatever, she would always get them candy.
And so you're under the belief that she went over, that was Megan, she went in there, got candy while they were trying to figure out whose fault it was and everything.
Yes.
And she brought candy back out to the kids that were in the car that got hit.
Yep.
Okay. Did they stick around? Did the police show up to do a police report on the wreck? What do you know? No.
No, they said that they called their grandfather, and he got Mike's license, registration, all that kind of stuff, and that they went on about they got their car fixed, but Mike paid for it.
Okay. And but Mike still insists that he didn't know Megan at all?
Megan at all.
Okay, and we've already talked about this show that was on Spike TV about the disappearances of women in Ohio. He was on that program, and what did Mike say about Megan?
That he didn't know her, that she was a snitch, is actually what he called her. And I'd like to say to him, well, I can't say what I'd like to say to him.
No,
it's not very nice.
We're going to keep it PG.
Yeah.
Here on Unfound, this is a kid-friendly show. Many adults listen to this program with their kids in the car and things, so we have to keep it PG. But he just outright called her a snitch.
Yes, and that upsets us very badly because Megan was not a snitch. Think about it this way, okay? You're an addict. Like, say you're an addict, or I'm an addict, or somebody's an addict, and they only have so many places that they can get their drugs.
Yeah.
Now, why would they go and get those places busted, and then they're sick and can't get the drugs anywhere else? They're not going to. They're not going to do that. She was strictly addicted to oxycodone or Oxycontin, whatever they call it back then. I don't know because I wasn't in that. I don't know what they called it, but I think it was oxycodone.
It's an opioid.
Yeah, an opioid.
Yeah.
She was only addicted to opioids. She was not addicted to heroin. She was very allergic. She, with whatever they put in it. She was addicted to strictly Oxy 30s. And so, with that being said, why would you get your dealers busted when you know that there's only 3 or 4 dealers in the county, and you're that addicted to something? You're not going to go and get them busted. She was not a snitch.
Yeah. But and she wasn't. In fact, the reason, if we were to believe her story about Angela Compton, and she was forced into that.
Yes.
With threat of having her child taken away, son taken away, and never see him again. That.
And the officer that did that to her was Officer Steve Timberlake, and he is now back, I think, as a detective. He never needed to be back in a detective spot because, he's had her so scared because he, I guess, takes foster children. And so she thought that he would end up with him and that he would send him far away from here. Like, she was scared to death.
She said that? You heard Megan say that?
I heard Megan say that.
Okay. All right, so Megan was not a snitch. Mike Moran claims he doesn't know her, even though they seemingly got into this car wreck, even though he seemingly picked her up at her parents' house at some time.
Yep.
But he claims that he didn't know her. But his name's in her book, and it's sure, and his name is Mearan, not a very common spelling of that last name, kind of last name.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to the next person that was in the book, and we should know that this person's full name was not in the book, but let's talk about the person known as E, so the letter E, and how you found out who he actually was.
E ended up being, all you have to do is Google search the number and it'll come back to him. I Google searched the number, and first is how I figured it out, to know that it was him. And when I called, he got all upset, saying he didn't know how I got that number. That number was to his security system and that sort of thing. But he used to be the captain of the Portsmouth Police Department who is over Megan's case. And his name is was Captain Lynn Brewer.
So Lynn and then last name Brewer.
Yes.
Okay.
And then one day I got the chance to come face to face with Mr. Brewer.
Uh-huh.
And I asked him, why would he be in her book? What was his dealings? Why is pretty much what I was asking. And he got mad at me and arrested me for disorderly conduct.
When did this happen?
May of 2016, I believe.
All right, so a few years after she went missing.
Yes, and it is in the court records, and it was dropped.
Okay, so he didn't like you were asking him too many difficult questions, I think is what it was,
yes.
Katie. Too many difficult questions. You're not allowed to ask cops those difficult questions. Okay, Katie?
I guess not.
Okay. But you were actually put in handcuffs and put in a cell.
Yes.
Okay. And how long were you in there?
Just a few hours.
Okay. Your husband must have been going nuts. Must have been.
Yeah.
He must have wanted to tear somebody's head off, I bet.
Yes.
All right. And then they finally let you out. And have you ever been able to talk to Lynn Brewer again?
No.
All right. And in the book, of course, his name, it's just E. It's not Lynn Brewer. It doesn't say Lynn Brewer, but you figured it out, once again, in using this, I think, a BS explanation as to the number and everything else. Now, Mike Moran had a dollar amount by his name. Was there any dollar amount besides that E that signifies Lynn? Any dollar amount?
No.
Okay. So there wasn't anything beside Lynn's letter. Once again, his name is not specifically in there, although his number allegedly went to a security system, whatever he said. But his name was highlighted in blue. Do you think that could mean it's to remind Megan that he was a policeman?
I'm not sure. I've tried to figure out what her coding was with that, because she had some kind of something, I don't know if the blues were all the drug dealers or the, I don't know.
Okay. How many different colors did she use? Let's put it this way. Was Mike Moran's name highlighted?
Mike Moran's name was not on this one.
Okay, well, his name is in the book, though, right?
Yes, but it was not on this specific page.
Okay, all right, so just on this specific page is when she highlighted people?
Yes, she made it like three different colors. I would have to look at it to tell you the exact colors, but
okay.
I know there was a blue and there was a pink, and there was only one name in pink, and his name on there was Floyd.
Okay.
So I always just call him Pink Floyd.
Right.
So I can remember.
Okay.
So,
and did you call this who was Pink Floyd?
Pink Floyd was a dental surgeon in Columbus, Ohio.
And did you talk to him?
No, I talked to a lady that could barely speak English. And she just told me she didn't know why his name or number would be on this piece of paper, and all of that.
Was there a was there a dollar amount beside his name, like there was beside Mike's?
And she did not. She told me that that they had that number for years.
Okay.
So she did not deny having the she was just a woman.
Mm-hmm.
She did not deny having the number.
Are we sure this just wasn't a case of her needing a dental surgeon, and that's the only reason his name was in there? Is that possible, or do you think it's something like the rest of these guys?
I think it's something like the rest of the guys.
Okay. All right. So we have Mike Moran, who is a defense attorney who's well known in the Portsmouth area. A little bit, I would call him notorious.
Yep.
We have Lynn Brewer, although his name's not in there. You did establish that he is there, and of course you had a run-in with him, and he threw you in jail a few years after that. He's never been able to explain why his name's in there.
No, and he tries to tell me I made that list up. And I said, listen, buddy, I said, why on earth, out of everybody in this police department, would I pick you to pick on?
Yeah.
I said, until now, I've never had any beef with anybody. I've never been in trouble. I have a very clean background.
Had you even heard of Lynn Brewer before Megan disappeared?
No.
Okay. Right. Okay. And is Lynn Brewer still a policeman in Portsmouth?
No.
Okay. Well, that's some good news. All right. Now, the last guy that we need to talk about is a guy, William Marshall. Is he in the book?
Well, he may be abbreviated, but not by his first name, no.
Okay. But we're going to talk about him because he's been in the news a little bit over the years in Ohio for various reasons. But what can you tell the listeners about him? Did he and Mike Moran work together?
Yes, they do. William Marshall is an ex-judge here in Portsmouth, Ohio. And he helps Mike. He used to help Mike, like, get the girls out. Like, he would let them get out. And what I'm told is, now, again, I've never worked in this sort of line of work, so it's kind of hard for me to speak on what they do.
Yeah.
But I do know from a couple girls that have told me that they were told if they worked for Mike and Marshall doing, sexual favors, dances, certain things like that they wouldn't go to jail. But the first time that they quit doing it, they would go to jail.
Huh.
So they're trafficking women.
All right. So they're maybe possibly exploiting them a little bit.
Yes.
That's the allegation. That William Marshall, as judge, he was getting a lot of Mike Moran's cases.
Yes.
And
it was in the, I don't know if you guys, well, you probably, I don't know if you guys get it or not, but it was in the USA Today just a couple weeks ago.
Okay. And what did that article say?
It said it was called Trapped and Trafficked, One Town's Little Secret, Dirty Little Secret.
This is the story about Portsmouth.
Yes.
Okay. And William Marshall is mentioned in that article?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, he also got in some trouble regarding his daughter. And
yes.
And tell the listeners about that. Now, this is not having anything to do with Megan's case, but these are the kind of people in positions of power in Portsmouth, and we know that Mike Moran was in Megan's book. We know that they had some sort of relationship, despite Mike denying it. Mike and William Marshall seem kind of close, and he's a judge of all things. But what did he try to do for his daughter?
He tried to get her off of a ticket, and mind you, it was a small speeding ticket. But he said that judges should, or that law enforcement officers should, that there's a code of ethics or a code of conduct was what he used.
Uh-huh.
Between law enforcement and these judges and different things.
Uh-huh.
And he got reprimanded for it.
I hope he did.
And all he got was he can't practice law for 6 months. That's really nothing, but...
Okay. And William Marshall also got a DUI as well. So
yes.
That guy has a lot of things going on, it sounds like, Katie. A lot of things going on. But these are three men in positions of power in the Portsmouth area. Mike Moran is a defense attorney. Lynn Brewer is a police captain. William Marshall is a judge. And they all sound pretty dirty to me.
Yes.
How does a police captain end up in a young woman's little black book and then comes up with it? How would she know the number to a security system? That's hilarious.
Exactly.
Okay. Anybody else that you'd like to mention that was in this book that the listeners should know about? And once again, you have the book. Megan wrote it. We're allowed to talk about it. Anybody else of note that should be mentioned?
Fred Brisker.
And who is he?
He is he used to be. Now, since all this has come out, they found different things on him to take his license or do something to him. I can't speak like specifics because I don't know them.
Okay.
But they found him signing. He's an insurance agent. So, they found him signing things that he wasn't supposed to be signing for another insurance agent or whatever.
Okay.
and he's a, I want to say financial something. So, he was in a position of power also. He works with Moran and Marshall and all of them.
Okay. Okay, and was he not, and we're going to talk about this affidavit, was he not part of this affidavit that was filed in 2015?
Yes, he was.
All right, so there were charges that were brought to a grand jury in 2015 against all of Mike Moran, Fred, many others. I don't think William Marshall or Lynn Brewer were a part of that, but there were a group of people, even a couple
William
women.
Marshall's name was not mentioned, but a judge, a Portsmouth, Ohio judge was mentioned.
Okay. But there was an affidavit that they were all involved in corrupt activities.
Yes.
What was it? To hear, I'd like you to explain it. What was the overall charge of what they were doing? And
well, the overall, everything that they were saying that they were charging or that they were doing were white slavery, human trafficking, drug trafficking, and some gang related things.
Okay, so that what they were doing would run in with, they might have been doing business with gangs that were doing the same thing.
Yep.
Okay. And this affidavit was filled out in 2015. This was because of a grand jury, and it just kind of sat there for a long time. And in fact, when you and I started talking, Katie, this was still something that was kind of behind the scenes. In fact, when I even did a search for it, you only could find one place in the entire internet that even mentioned it. But since then, it's all kind of come out, I think, in March, this article that you mentioned, where all of these people were named, and actually some of them did go to jail, but not all of them. Any reason, to your knowledge, that some of them went to jail and other ones didn't?
Because of their names. I mean,
that's what you
is
think?
What I think. Yeah.
Okay. Now there was a guy who seemed like not that great of a guy, but seemed to want to do the correct thing. His last name was Eubanks. What did he do in contrast to everybody else who was named? He released something or did something?
Yep, he gave us the affidavit.
Okay. And that's how those names all got out, isn't it?
Yes.
It is. Okay. Did he end up going to jail?
Yes, he was one charged. He got like 8 years.
Oh, my. So he's in jail now?
Yes.
Oh, my. Okay. So Mike Moran, he was named in this affidavit. He didn't go to jail?
No.
Did Fred go to jail?
No.
Okay. Now let's move up to this recent article that was mentioned. Moran is interviewed in it, and what does he have to say about all these charges against? I mean, everything regarding the corruption, regarding any of these women, regarding Megan, anything. What does he say about all of it?
That none of it's true, and he actually had, I mean, the goals, the something I don't know, to say that the I just lost my train of thought.
Go ahead, think about it for a second.
He wanted to know what human trafficking even was.
Really?
Yes.
That's true. That's in that article.
Yep.
That's true, because I've read it. I remember that. He did say it. Listeners should know, yes, he did say that, and I will be linking. By the time you're hearing this interview, I will have linked to that article both on Twitter, on Facebook in the group, Facebook on the page, and everywhere else, so people can read that article for themselves. And it's incredible. It's just a mind blower. It's a mind blower. And this is the whole entire article is really about Portsmouth corruption.
Yes.
And it's just showing how these people in the positions of power, it definitely seems like some things are going on. And Mike Moran, he'd lead you to believe that this is like some conspiracy against them, like all these women who have these claims that he did this, made them he made them do this and do that. It's all a conspiracy against him.
Yes, and he's actually going to sue the Cincinnati Enquirer for the article.
Well, that should be interesting. Okay,
Yes,
well, we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Okay, now that we can't forget, though, talking about all this corruption and people in this in the black book, that still, unfortunately, Megan is still missing.
Yes.
All right, and to your knowledge, once again, you've been the point woman on this since day one. On that evening of April 3rd, let's even say into April 4th, can you prove that she might have been with Mike Moran or ran into Lynn Brewer or any of these names, these people that we've just named? Any proof of any of none? Zero.
None.
Zero. Okay.
No. None. And this has just been a hard experience.
Sure.
Overall.
Sure.
Because those people, they do have money and power and different things that our family does not have. And it's sad that they use that against people, every day. I mean, we're all working people, but we don't have, hundreds and thousands of dollars just to throw, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Yeah, I
don't know.
I do. And as many listeners know, corruption does pop up on this program once in a while. And the truth is that I keep the statistics. At least 10% of the cases that Unfound covers, a police officer is at least considered a person of interest or a suspect. So mentioning Lynn Brewer is not unusual in my world.
Yeah.
Not saying that it had anything to do with her disappearance, but it's not hard to believe that police officers' names pop up, on the periphery of some of these cases. Because, like I said, it's 10% of the time we're doing that on Unfound, talking about them. Okay. But still, there's no real connection. All we have is a sighting that you had earlier in the day of her with this other guy in her car. We don't know who that is. We know she was at the Dixons. Okay. She seemingly saw Shannon Woods, but then she's at Walmart, and we don't know what happened after that.
No.
But I'm going to ask you this and kind of try to tie this up before we move on to a couple of things. Do you believe it's possible that the reason that you can't get your hands on those Verizon phone records is because of Lynn Brewer?
I do kind of think so, yes.
Okay, because he was the police captain at the time.
Yep.
And he's in her book.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. Because I can tell you, I'm working behind the scenes on a variety of disappearances in California, and I just within the last few weeks had phone records sent to me, and they're most extensive phone records I've ever seen. So families can get their hands on phone records. Yeah. Police, I've never heard of police getting in the way. Not in any case that Unfound is covering. We're going on 130 cases now. Okay. So we just don't know. Let's talk about your private investigator. Her name is Lily. Let's talk a little bit about her. How long has she been working with you, your family, and what has she done? And, this has to be difficult for her given the corruption.
Yes, she's been working with us, I think, since 2015.
Okay.
She has interviewed. She has, conducted a lot of, we've done events. We've done awareness events. We've done human trafficking events. She's went out. She's, surveillance. She's done all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just a really great lady all the way around, and we're lucky to have her.
Okay, and how often would you say that you talk to her? Does she mainly talk to Megan's mother?
Oh, no, she talks to me about daily.
Daily?
Yes.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yep.
Okay. So, does she, we don't do theories on this program, but and I'm not asking you to say, and I'm not going to expect you to say, and I really don't want you to. But does she have a theory on what happened to Megan?
She has a couple.
She has a couple. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's
that
leave it.
She's working on.
Okay. Great. Okay. And I guess she has also been unsuccessful of trying to get her hands on those phone records. Maybe, I don't know.
She's been. I'm going to talk to her about it again to see if she can try.
Well, I'm glad it sounds I'm glad it sounds like you found somebody you can trust. That's.
Yep.
I could tell you it's a little hard to find. Let's move on to this. What's this been like for you?
For me, it's been very rough, very hard, and I want everybody to know that if you have a missing loved one, I'm here for you, and I will do what I can to help bring your loved one home too, because I feel like one missing person is one too many. So, for me, it's been tiresome.
Yeah. And of course, your husband is Megan's brother. I have not had a chance to talk to him, and that's fine. But how would you say that he's handled everything since 2013?
Pretty roughly. This was his only little sister. And he's done the best he can, and he's my support, and he's a great support. He's been, he supports me on whatever I do to bring her home, and, he's done a couple interviews. He's not the type that likes to be in the spotlight of any sort.
Yeah.
And it's no fun. I'm not the type either, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, us guys, I have to tell you, it's been over a year since I interviewed a guy for this program. So I think that your husband's attitude is not unusual.
Yeah.
I talk to women mostly on the phone. I'm not saying I haven't talked to men as, companion, as maybe to back up or support or give me a different point of view or anything. But for the official interviews we do for the program, it's been women for the last year.
Yeah.
So I think your husband's attitude is, there's just something about us guys. It's, we're the strong silent types.
Yeah.
This can be very emotional.
He's been the one to cheer me on and say, "You've got this. You can do it." Yeah. But I took him on one show with me called the Security Brief, and that was tough on him. It's tough reliving it every time you do an interview.
Yes, true.
And it can mess with you a little bit. So it's been good for me just to, and I don't do a bunch of interviews like in 1 week or something like that. I space them out quite a bit.
Yeah, I can understand that. I understand that. There was something that you wanted to say earlier. Did you want to put that in here right now?
Yes, if
Katie,
we're done.
Please, we're almost done. But you wanted to make sure you wanted to say something before we kind of do the conclusion of the program. But go ahead.
I just want to say that, that we love Megan with all of our hearts, her whole family, and we just want her home. We want her back. Whatever back is, we want her back. And we will do anything to make, to bring her back. And we will not, and I promise you, we will not stop or give up.
I love it. I love that. Love that attitude, Katie. Do you have a Facebook page or website set up for Megan?
Yes.
And please tell the listeners about it right now.
Okay. You can find us at Finding Megan. Let me make sure I think it's Finding Megan Lancaster 2013 on Facebook. Okay,
great. And I will find it and I will link to it in the group and on the page so people will know about it. So by the time we're doing this interview, okay. And I think that you have an email address as well. Why don't you give that out? Because we don't want to give out any phone numbers on this program. I think that would be a problem. But email, I think, is okay. Go ahead.
Okay, it is finding-megan2013@hotmail.com.
Okay, great. And I will post that email as well. Okay, great. Any final words before we complete this interview, Katie?
No, just if anybody's listening out there that might know where she's at or has her, please let her come home. We love and miss her dearly. And I'm telling you, we will not give up. I promise you that. And I promise you we will find whoever did this, whoever took her from us for this long, and bring her home.
Katie, thank you for being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And that was my interview with Katie Lancaster, sister-in-law and best friend of Megan Lancaster. I thank her for joining me and all of you on this episode. During the interview, we talked about Lily Paisley, a private investigator working on Megan's case. I got to speak to Lily 2 days after Katie's interview. Lily and I had an in-depth conversation about many of the topics covered in this interview. I really don't know how much I can divulge about our conversation, but I will tell you this. Like many of the kinds of disappearances where there are drugs involved, shady characters, and people in positions of power, the possibilities and rumors and theories run in all sorts of different directions, with all angles being both believable and contradictory at the same time. For example, Megan's disappearance could have been an overdose that had nothing to do with Mike Moran or Lynn Brewer or a little black book or anything else. It could be she took the wrong drugs at the wrong time. And it's nobody's fault. Or everyone could be involved, and the case isn't solved due to some massive cover-up. Or it could be anything in between. But really, this disappearance isn't about the people named in Megan's book. This case is really about the people not named in the book. The men who aren't sex trafficking women, who aren't using the services of a prostitute, who aren't covering up anything. This case is also about the women who aren't doing drugs, who haven't been drawn into the world of prostitution, who've had better choices in men. Where are these people in the Portsmouth area? Where are they, and where are their spines? Where's that good, incorruptible cop over the last 30 years who could start weeding out the Lynn Brewers of the world? Where's that lawyer been who can bring together other lawyers to clean up the crooked people in the justice system of Portsmouth, Ohio? Where are those people who can put their fears to the side and do the right thing? That's the list of people I'm most concerned about. But at this point, I don't think that list is very long. Surely not as long as the list of Johns in Megan's little black book. On the other hand, we must consider that outside investigators have been through Portsmouth, people who have no connection to the area, who couldn't be blackmailed or convinced to look the other way. They've questioned many controversial and seemingly shady people. They've issued indictments and affidavits and charges. Yet Mike Moran, among others, haven't changed their behavior at all. In fact, right now in Moran's office, there are young women in exactly the same position that Megan was in 6 years ago. And he's still an attorney. And to my knowledge, he has no criminal record. So, is he the slickest criminal in Ohio history? Or could there be nothing to all these allegations against him? Moreover, and to be honest, and to the letter of the law, Megan's book said dance for Mike Moran, not something else. And lap dances aren't illegal. And why would Megan write dance instead of sex in her own private journal if it was sex that she and Mike were having? Also, we can't forget that Lynn Brewer, although his name was not specifically in the book, a letter signifying him was in there, but there was no dollar amount by his name, and there were no comments by his name at all. It was just highlighted in blue. Either way, there's still no proof that any of these people were involved in Megan's disappearance. But of course, that could always change. I'll leave the rest of the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a nice review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.